Well, good morning. This is Barry Odell with the Church of Christ at Mammoth Spring Facebook page. It is Monday morning, October 18th, 2021. And we've got some folks joining on. Let me see who we've got here. Brandon Bruntz, good morning. Glad to see you. Hey, there's Gail, Linda, Lyle, Diana. All right, good to see all of you and others who are joining on. As always, if you have any questions or comments while the stream is going on, please feel free to use the comment section that is available to you. And as you can see, it's going to look a bit different today. I'm going to put some things up on the screen for you to see. And I know if you're looking at a smartphone or something, it's going to be a little more difficult to see, but I will read it to you. So I asked about, what would you guys like to study after we finish the book of Acts, and I got two requests. And sometimes once you ask for requests, you regret asking for requests. Well, I won't say that I regret it, but I was given two topics: dinosaurs and the book of Ezekiel, and not together, but two different topics for study. Dinosaurs being one, and does the Bible talk about them? But then also the book of Daniel. Can we do a study of the book of Daniel? So I thought, well, we'll address dinosaurs and evolution and creationism first for a series of videos, and then we'll look at the book of Ezekiel. So that's where we are. And again, if you have any questions or comments, it may further the study, may go somewhere where I had not intentionally planned on it going, and that'll be perfectly fine. So please feel free to use the comment section or ask any questions. So I guess the place to start would be to obviously acknowledge that there is some controversy between the theory of evolution and the belief in creationism, intelligent design, as it is often referred to in I would say in the scientific world, as they're comparing the two. Good morning, Barry and Glenda. Good to see you guys. I was reading some material over the weekend from New Scientist magazine and a variety of what I would refer to as naturalistic publications in support of belief of the Darwinian theory of evolution. And by the way, I do have Charles Darwin's Origin of Species, and I've read that book, and I've read other books on that topic in the past, on the topic specifically of evolution. So I think it's important to kind of lay some groundwork, lay some definitions out first, and because we want to have an honest evaluation. You guys have heard me say before that I don't want to be misrepresented. Okay, I don't want my words taken out of context and things like that, and so I don't want to do that to other people. But it's like when we get to this particular topic, that happens on both sides. And so I'm going to try my very best to avoid that and to give an honest evaluation of this subject to the best of my ability. Now, I am not a biologist. I'm not a scientist or anything like that. But what we can do, hey, Brian, good to see you. What we can do is look at what they've written, and we can listen to what they've said, and we can weigh the evidence, and we can do the same thing for the biblical perspective on creation versus evolution and the origins of life and things like this. So I'll put forth my best effort to do that, to give a fair hearing to both sides, you might say. So obviously those on the side of evolution have a lot of problems with creationism, and obviously those on the side of creationism have a lot of problems with the issue of naturalistic evolution. Okay, the idea that life on Earth began without an intelligent designer, without some intelligent intention or purpose behind it, that life on Earth as we know it today is the result of a lot of time, a lot of chance, and evolution. And again, I know that's a very oversimplified definition, but essentially that's what we're dealing with. And I know scientists would probably be much more technical than that, but if you break it down, really, that's what it all comes down to. So today we're going to lay some groundwork for this study, and I'm going to use, like I said, this PowerPoint. And again, if you're looking on a small device, I know some folks will smartcast their phone to a television, and you can do that, and then you can perhaps see what exactly is on here, but I'll read it to you. So let's talk for a few minutes about evolution versus creationism. And for those of you who are members of the church, you're probably very well aware of the Apologetics Press institution, organization, apologeticspress.org. Man, I guess instead of me doing this, I could have said, hey, just go to that website and look at it. They have so much good material, so many articles. I've done a lot of reading over the years, and not just on this subject. Things written by them, videos done by them. I've actually gone in person to some of their lectures, and very, very well put together and thought out. And so I'll be obviously referencing some of that stuff. So let's do this first. So here's the definition of evolution. I can't remember exactly what site I got this from, but it's from one of their own. So they say evolution is the science of how organisms adapt and change over time as a result of inherited physical and behavioral characteristics that are passed down from parent to offspring, a process dubbed descent with modification. So again, I understand that's a fairly short definition of what evolution means, and there's a lot to it. Good morning, Debbie. But that's from them, okay? So these are their words, and I want to be clear on that, all right? So the concept behind that then is that all living things on earth, and by all living things on earth, we mean all living things on earth, whether we're talking about humans, animals, plants, marine life, whatever is living, okay? All living things on earth share a common ancestor, which first appeared 3.5 billion years ago. So typically, we're looking at the earth and things like this, approximately 5 billion years old, the universe older than that. But where we find ourselves dwelling today, 4.6 approximately, typically is the number we hear, billion years old. And that all living things now in existence share a common ancestor. And of course, that's one of the major points of divergence between a creationist and an evolutionist is the creationist doesn't look at it as if we were all from common ancestors that are simply the result of naturalistic processes over time and by chance. The creationist looks at it as we have a common creator, a common designer. And so why is it the case that there are certain animals that share a large percentage of DNA similarities to humans? Well, it's not because they descended, again, from the creationist perspective. It's not because we descended from a common ancestor, but it's the idea that we were all created by the creator of the universe. And so that's obviously a major point of divergence between evolution and creation, but we're explaining their perspective. All living things on earth share a common ancestor which first appeared 3.5 billion years ago, and those initial living organisms were very small and very simple and have evolved over time. So there are two types of evolution then that we could talk about. There's macroevolution and there's microevolution. Microevolution is this, and we'll talk about it further, but by definition, microevolution is the evolution or adaptation over short periods of time, and they stay within species. Okay, so at large, the teaching, the belief of evolution, okay, Darwinian evolution, is that the evolution and adaptation is over huge periods of time, and they cross the boundaries of species, you might say. And so one type of living being over time and by chance and natural selection give rise to a new species given enough time. Okay, and so that's macroevolution. Microevolution is small changes, short periods of time within species. Macroevolution is not observable because it's such a large-scale change over such a large period of time that it's not observable. Okay? So we need to understand the difference in those terms. As a Christian and as a believer in a creator, I don't have a problem with microevolution because there are changes within species and there are changes and adaptations that take place over time and that are observable. And we'll make note of that here. So let's think about that for just a minute. Okay, so in terms of microevolution, and again, this is from these what I'm getting ready to list here, these are not from creationist sites. These are from specifically from the evolutionary perspective. The size of sparrows. Of course, one of the great examples that they would use is Darwin's finches, okay? Darwin's travels to the Galapagos Islands and all the things that he saw there. The evolution, for instance, of resistance to pesticides and herbicides, and the evolution of viruses. Okay, so if we in 21st century America have been paying any attention, we know that viruses, okay, the coronavirus, it evolves. And it seems to evolve. It seems to have evolved a lot over the time that it's been here. And particularly with the development of what's the word? The shot. What's it called? The vaccines. Okay, so these processes of evolution are observable. Okay, and we see that, and so that's what I mean when I say a Christian, a creationist can look at microevolution and say, okay, we see that. We see the differences between sparrows or finches or other living beings that perhaps make small changes over small periods of time, and you can observe them. But guess what? Those sparrows that we're told they were introduced to America in 1852, and there are even differences in size and shape within the United States of America based on, well, are they up north? Are they in colder climates? Are they in the south and warmer climates? They look different. But guess what? They don't change to some other species. Those sparrows are still sparrows. They don't evolve into something that's not a sparrow. I'll say it that way. And so the idea of resistance to pesticides and herbicides, things that are exposed to certain things, mosquitoes becoming more resistant, for instance, to DDT and things like this, those things evolve over short periods of time and are observable. That is beyond deniability. And again, the same thing is true with the evolution of viruses, okay? Well, what about macroevolution? Now, that's a whole different story, okay? Macroevolution is large-scale change over huge periods of time and across the line of the lines of species. So this is the idea of the belief, for example, that dinosaurs over large periods of time and because of adaptations evolved into birds, and that humans are ultimately related to, descended from chimpanzees, okay? And other, well, another group is referred to as gibbons, Gibbons, that we are specifically descended from those groups. Let's use that word. So we have to, again, we don't want to misrepresent and say things that aren't true, but these are just examples of the difference between the types of evolution that are talked about. It's not just one word that means all these different things. There are variations, and we need to appreciate that and understand that. And, well, what's next? Okay. So in terms of the process, for instance, and we will eventually get to dinosaurs. I'm going to talk about some things today for a bit. We're already almost 15 minutes in, but in terms of the fossil record, and we'll talk about this too, that again, today we're just kind of laying some groundwork. Now, this quote here is, I believe it's from the New Scientist website. And so again, Darwinian evolution, things of this nature. In terms of the fossil evidence, they say, the fossil evidence is scarce and consists mostly, now listen to this, it consists mostly of isolated teeth. In other words, they find a tooth here and they find a tooth over there, and broken jaw fragments. Now, there are some things with like skull fragments, very tiny. It's interesting because when you actually dig into their processes of finding a bone, okay, finding a fossil, and they find a fragment of a jaw, and from a fragment of a jaw, then they will build an entire, I'll just use the word being. Well, there's a lot to consider more than just a fragment of a jaw or a few isolated teeth, okay? You've got a lot more to consider than just that, okay? For instance, the shape and size of the pelvis, for instance. So perhaps we'll get into all that. But fossil evidence, they admit, is scarce and consists mostly of isolated teeth and broken jawbones. I mean, arm bones, femurs have been found, some vertebrae, ribs, and things like this. But when we're talking about these big evidences, okay, of Darwinian evolution, of macroevolution, the evidence is scarce. They say that themselves, and so that is important to grasp in the beginning. So I want to just give you a couple of frauds. I remember when I was a kid in school, in elementary school, talking about these things. So there have been some evolutionary frauds, and that's going to lead us to a question here in just a few minutes. Okay, Piltdown Man. I remember when I was a kid in elementary school, we talked about the Piltdown Man, and this was a construction that was built from skull fragments that were found in 1912. So when we're talking about fragments, we're not talking about an entire skull. We're talking about a piece, however big or small it may be. And so skull fragments found in 1912, and they constructed Piltdown Man from that. And I don't have an image for that on here. You can look that up yourself. But this is a quote from Evolutionists. Piltdown Man was an audacious fake and a sophisticated scientific fraud. Well, I mean, what can you do with skull fragments? Again, how can you determine how tall this thing was, what it ate, how it walked? Did it walk on all fours? Did it walk just on two? Was it swinging from trees? And you're going to tell me all that from a chunk of a skull? And then another one that was big news, okay, Lucy. And again, another term for Lucy is Australopithecus. And you can Google all this stuff, and you can look at the images, and you can look at the research that was done. But Lucy was found in 1974. They found a part of a jawbone. They found a tooth, a partial skull, and some arm bones and a couple ribs. All right. New Scientist in 2015, this is on their website, admits that some bones are from a baboon. And this is not uncommon. The mixture, they find some bones in an area, and they throw them all together. And, well, we have, okay, Australopithecus, or we have the Piltdown Man. And over time, and thankfully, I would say, through some honest examination, they're found to be fraudulent. So these two were held up for quite some time as, man, this is it. This is the missing link that brings our common ancestor, humans, our common ancestor to us today. This is it. So here's my question. If that is the case, if the evidence is so abundant and undeniable, then why create the frauds? And by the way, these are just two. There are quite a few others that you can research. Evolutionary frauds. If there is so much evidence, and if it's beyond question that we evolved over large periods of time and we jumped species to species, why even bother with the frauds? But that's what's happened. So that's kind of just laying some groundwork. Now I want to think about something here for just the next few minutes. I'm going to go ahead and close this out. I'll stay small on the screen apparently. Not exactly sure how to adjust that midstream here. Let me try something. This could get ugly. All right, we'll try that. Anyway, so laying the groundwork for evolution, we have to understand and appreciate the differences, like I said, between microevolution, macroevolution. That is big scale, long-term changes that are not observable or repeatable, as opposed to changes that happen over shorter periods of time that are observable and can be, I guess you would say, tested and repeated. Okay, we often think of the scientific method, things like that. There is a difference in those things, and we need to be honest enough to admit that and not misrepresent. But from the creationist perspective, okay, one of the things that is fundamental to the Christian faith, and not only because, well, you read it in the book of Genesis, but throughout the New Testament, you have the I would say the authentication or the verification of what the Old Testament talks about or records is authenticated or restated by Jesus Christ himself and his inspired apostles. of course, an evolutionist, an atheistic evolutionist is going to reject everything that I'm about to say. Okay, so be it, all right? But from the creationist perspective, we believe in the 6 days of creation. Now, there are some variations to that. There are what we call theistic evolutionists. That is, they believe in God. They believe in somewhat the creation account, but they try to harmonize the creation account with the evolutionary processes. Okay, so they have to accept that position. You have to say, well, the days of Genesis 1 weren't really days. They were epochs of time. I don't really want to go into theistic evolution, but that belief is out there, that God exists, but he also used the processes of natural selection and creation and all of that. But from the creationist perspective, looking at the Bible as it records the creation account, God created everything in 6 days. And on the 6th day, since the request for this specific study was about dinosaurs, I'm going to go back to Genesis chapter 1. Here's what the Scripture states on this subject. Okay, Genesis chapter 1, and let's see here. Verse 26, I'll start. Let us make man in our image according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. Then God blessed then God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. So on the 6th day, so Genesis 1 records for us the creative processes of God, and on the 6th day he created those animals. Verses 24 and 25 record this, cattle, creeping thing, beast of the earth. God made the beast of the earth according to its kind, and according to its and cattle according to its kind, and everything that creeps on the earth according to its kind. And God saw that it was good, and that's the day he also created man and woman. Now, are there other places in the Bible where we could talk about, okay, was this 6 days of creation, or were these epochs of time, or as some people say, epochs of time? I'd never heard that word pronounced that way until a couple years ago, but anyway. Are there other parts of Scripture that talk to us about the days of creation? Okay, should we understand them as days? Does the language of Genesis 1 lend that idea that God created everything in 6 literal days? Well, just looking at Genesis chapter 1, he uses this word yom to describe days, and that word is contextual. In other words, the context will tell you what type of day it is, okay? Everything in Genesis chapter 1 points to the fact that these are days as we know them. Talks about the evening and the morning was the first day. The evening and the morning was the second day. I mean, that's how the language lays it out. Now, if we reject that, okay, if we don't believe that they are days, then we have a lot of explaining to do for some other passages. And I think a prime passage that deals with this is the revelation of the law of Moses to Israel in Exodus chapter 20. So listen to this. Moses delivering the law to the Israelites. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. In the 7th day, you shall do no work. You, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger who is within your gates. Well, why is that the case? Why observe that day, the 7th day, as we call it the last day of the week? For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth and the sea. And now listen to this. Okay, so this is Exodus 20 and verse 11. Because the common belief is that humans are separated from dinosaurs by millions of years, and that they could not have coexisted upon the earth. All right, they reigned, they lived during the Mesozoic age, and there are different periods of time, the Jurassic and the Triassic, and there's another one, but that they lived millions of years before humans. Okay. And there are some Christians who believe that dinosaurs predated humans. Okay. Well, you're going to have to come up with a pretty good explanation of Exodus 20 and verse 11, because in 6 days you need to work, Israel, and on the seventh day you don't work, because in 6 days the Lord made, listen, the heavens and the earth and the sea and all that is in them. Well, what does "and all that is in them" mean? I mean, what else can that mean other than that all that is in them? And rested the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. So, and there are a lot of other passages that talk about the Sabbath day. So that's kind of some groundwork, and we'll progress from here. But I kind of wanted to lay both sides out. And again, I know it's very, very fundamental. I get that, but it's accurate. Okay, this is what's said from both sides, we'll say. And the question then of, well, what came first and what came when and how did all that work? We'll progress into that study, but that's kind of what I wanted to do today, is give us some definitions, understand, try to, before we launch into the bigger stuff, understand fundamentally what precisely we're talking about in the process of evolution, in the process of creation, looking at both sides and trying to give each a fair treatment, all right? So I think that's where I'm going to stop today. I don't see any questions or comments, just all the greetings. And there's William. Good to see you, William. As always, once the stream's over, you will still have access to the comment section, so feel free to add comments or questions. And I'll say this too. From the creationist side, I've actually seen Christians who deny that dinosaurs even existed. They believe that's kind of a conspiracy theory of evolutionists. So, again, we have to be fair and admit that there are some loons on both sides, let's say it that way. But anyway, I wanted to throw that in too. All right, guys. Appreciate it, Diana. Thank you for being here, and all the rest of you who are here. As always, if you have any questions or comments, as I said, you can access the comment section after the stream is over. Well, I guess that's it for today. All right, guys. We'll plan on coming back tomorrow at 11 o'clock, and we'll continue the discussion. So hope you have a good day, and I hope to see you back here tomorrow at 11 o'clock.